Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Had to check my watch to make sure it was already afternoon. Lost track of time here in Las Vegas as designed. Hope everyone is doing very well, and I just want to start off by thanking everyone so much for spending your week here at Google Next here in Las Vegas with all of us, but more importantly, your afternoon in the next 45 minutes with the three of us in this room talking about Salesforce and Google. My name is Seth Siciliano. We'll go through some quick introductions, and then we'll get off into the agenda. We are going to go through a bit of a fireside chat format today, hopefully hitting a variety of topics, but our hope is to have time at the end for some Q&A as well. So if you have questions, feel free, and if we run out of time, we can always take some of those questions out in the hallway afterwards. So without any further ado, again, my name is Seth Siciliano. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Ali Arsanjani and Kaushal Kurapati from Salesforce. We'll go through introductions in a minute. So what I do at Google Cloud, I run what we call our horizontal ISV ecosystem team. Essentially what that is my organization works with Google Cloud's largest and most strategic application vendors, technology partnerships, and we build everything from product integration and co-innovation all the way through go-to-market and joint co-selling to our joint customers. So Salesforce is one of our most strategic and important partners, which is why we're here today. Ali?
Yes, hi, Ali Arsanjani. I lead AI/ML partner engineering for Google Cloud and run an AI/ML Center of Excellence. We are very, very honored to have our partners such as Salesforce working with us. Our charter in collaboration with Seth and our business development organization is to onboard our partners. So we're advocating for our partners to onboard them on our AI platform. And we've done some great work together, thanks to Kaushal and company.
Kaushal?
All right, thanks first of all. Thanks for inviting and thanks for having us. Really excited. My name is Kaushal. I lead product management for our AI stack, AI platform, and which includes both predictive AI and generative AI. Of course, generative AI is a significant portion of it now from a roadmap standpoint. We were talking about it just previously. But we'll talk about some of the exciting things that we have done together and what the future looks like.
All right, fantastic. Let's start off with some of that. Kaushal, do you want to give, and I can add some color commentary here, but maybe you start off and give everyone a little bit of just the lay of the land of what we've been doing over the last year together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way to think about this partnership and what we've been bringing together is the power of data and AI together, right? Bringing it in a responsible manner for customers to leverage their investments in data, investments in AI, wherever they've made it, and unlock the power of those investments and combining so that they can drive efficiency, productivity, and grow their businesses in a significant manner. And you'll see some examples of that. And I think it's all about, without data, there's no AI. I mean, as hopefully people realize that data quality is really a significant aspect of it, and the data completeness. So I think that's what this speaks to.
Great.
Maybe building on that, the two areas significant areas that we partnered here are on the data side. We allow for a partnership with Data Cloud from Salesforce Data Cloud and also BigQuery, which allows customers to really bring in data, bring your own lake is what we call it on our side, essentially to combine various data assets that wherever they are. As you all know, data is siloed, it's there in multiple places, so it's a reality, right? But without having to copy data, like in a zero copy model, you can still leverage data to be reflected kind of almost natively in Salesforce Data Cloud. And once the data is sort of complete in that sense, you can really use any model that you've made investments in, perhaps in Vertex. You've trained models there, you've tuned models there, and we allow you to bring those models into Salesforce ecosystem to leverage the power of that. And it really drives data-driven decision-making, makes sales, customer service, marketing, all of them much smarter. And that's what we're seeing some examples of with customers.
Yeah, I really love that last way that you phrased it. It's making those lines of business smarter and getting more insights out of that data, whether that data is in Google, in BigQuery, or somewhere within Salesforce. The bidirectionality of the product integration that we focused on over the last year is really one of the core tenets of the partnership, ensuring that our customers essentially are getting increased value out of the investments that they've already made in both companies.
Yep.
Right? Those investments are in technology, but our goal is to make those technology investments work better together through the data federation and the integration of Bring Your Own AI as well, to really unlock more value and opportunity from those investments. So anything else, Ali, that you want to add there?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the use cases, the 5 use cases that we just have on the screen here, if you think about what you're doing in your companies and trying to achieve any one of those goals, like enhanced customer insights, for example, think about it for a second. Where does your customer data reside? Possibly in Salesforce, right? And you have other extraneous data that can reside in BigQuery. And so with that, we allow you to create enhanced insights by leveraging the data, bringing your model, as Kaushal mentioned, on a Vertex AI endpoint that consolidates all these disparate places where information is stored within your organization, combines them in a very intelligent way, and delivers them. For example, with our Gemini 1.5 models, you can put a vast amount of information from Salesforce, from BigQuery in it, and it will pick out the needle from the haystack, which is a proverbial natural language processing problem. As you know, these large language models in general have very good recollection of the beginning or end of what you give them, but the middle is murky. Gemini 1.5 actually allows multiple needle in the haystack, meaning it remembers things that are inside, in between. So for example, you have a 400-page book, so to speak. What's written on page 200 may be forgotten by other models. With Gemini, you can pick that out. So insights that could be hidden in Salesforce and then combined with the data that augments it in BigQuery can be retrieved from that vast amount of information. And remember, some of these models, like our Gemini family, have complex reasoning capabilities. So you can have the ability to plan, orchestrate, understand causality, and pick those very important, hyper-personalized things that are impactful for you to complete a sale or close a sale. So those elements are increasingly important for us to remove the bottlenecks to achievement of these use cases. So what Salesforce and Google have done is bring this together, lower that barrier to entry, avoid the friction so you can get to these use cases.
Fantastic. You know, we're kind of getting into the first question here already, which is really the hallmark of a well-rehearsed and well-practiced conversation. So just building off of this momentum over the last couple of years, I think, over the last year, excuse me, I think Salesforce and Google have had 3 large product announcements, integration announcement, and partnership announcements over the last year. Can you both, maybe start with you, Kaushal, but both start to talk a little bit about why you see that momentum building and what value that really unlocks for our joint customers? I'm going to say that over and over again, our joint customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key points are about, let's say data is, you start with data, right? And then we were talking about it before, maybe 18 months ago, a lot of the focus was really on the data side, and AI hadn't arrived so much in a big way, the generative AI part, of course. But it starts with data, so we started in the right place. The data part of it is, let's say you've got I can take example of a hotel chain, which has maybe your visit information and your profile information stored in BigQuery, right? But we've got on the Salesforce side, a Salesforce relationship with them, and they store all the customer support information and sales information on our side, right? What this allows you to do is, without having to copy data and move it from one place to the other, it really allows you to sort of hook those two together in a very native manner, right? So that you can see as though you can operate on that unified data set as though it's living in just one place. And what you can do is use Salesforce like marketing. If you're using it for marketing, then you can use it for segmentation of data appropriately because you know the person's profile and the visit information along with, oh, they've maybe had a customer service issue. Like if you left that piece out of the picture, then you would not have the complete picture for that. So the data is full, it's complete, it's not necessary that you copy it from one place to the other. And at the same time, then what you can do is you can really use that full picture of the data and train the model wherever you're training. So this is again goes to, you've already made an investment in Vertex perhaps, right? So then we're saying you don't need to kind of change your ML investment completely to come and use another model or another set of things that we are leveraging on the platform. We are an open and flexible platform that way, right? So our AI platform strategy is open and flexible, so we integrate with many things, best of breed. So we are allowing customers to bring in that model from Vertex and say, you've tuned it there, now you've got the full data set you can operate on, and now you can calculate whether it's churn propensity or a person who's going to X, Y, Z next in the marketing journey, and really take advantage of the full picture. So that's where it unlocks really trapped data, I think. It unlocks the power of data is trapped in one place or the other. It really unlocks that and unshackles that. And at the same time, it unlocks a lot of the investments you've made in machine learning. Now with the power of generative AI, that same partnership is expanding to not just predictive models, but generative models as well.
Yeah, thank you. Ali, you work with so many customers and partners across such a wide spectrum. What do you think the momentum of the Salesforce partnership with Google Cloud unlocks for customers?
I think it unlocks the optionality primarily that Kaushal was also mentioning, the optionality to tap into your data sources. And I think the key thing that you were mentioning about unlocking, unshackling the data is very important because we have data in our organizations that are typically siloed data sets. And by allowing that data to start interacting with each other, we unlock the potential of accessing that data. But then we need something to actually stitch that data together. And it's not necessarily always a SQL join or a vector database for that matter. It may be a combination of elements. So you may need SQL, you may need a graph database, you may need unstructured data, and generative AI models that are capable enough can go out combined with retrieval augmentation, look at these data sets, combine them in ways that you never thought was possible, understand the underlying patterns. That's where the productivity, the efficiency, and essentially sometimes if it's a customer asking for something, it's improved customer satisfaction, improved response times for the customer.
Yeah.
So the customer is a great segue, and Kaushal, you made a point as well about data being so foundational. I roll back, in our memories a year and a half ago when most companies in most industries were increasingly beginning to self-label themselves as data companies.
Right.
Not a retail company, not hospitality, but data companies. So talk a little bit, that data and the customer data is so critical and so foundational. So can you talk a little bit about how that can be used and leveraged to improve that customer experience and that engagement with customers?
Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, if you take that earlier kind of example of the hotels and chain and so on, say they've had a bad customer experience, but the data was not unified, so to speak, because of BigQuery and Salesforce Data Cloud partnership, then they might come to customer service and the customer service agent doesn't know that they stayed there recently because that data is living on Google side. And if that was not, then they act in a particular way, which is like, okay, how you as a customer, you're calling in, you'll be so frustrated because you're like, well, you don't even know that I stayed there and I'm a platinum customer or whatever it is, because all that profile exists probably somewhere else. And now if we were able to sort of do that integration, and because of this integration, you are able to look at the whole profile and say, we know exactly what is happening, and as though the data is natively sort of represented. So you can take all the actions just as without copying the data over there. And I think that's the power of what that full picture gives you, because then you can compute a proper score. And we all know this intuitively, I think, but it's perhaps worth repeating that if the data is not complete, if you're feeding it half-baked information, as it were, then the AI is also not going to be responding. I mean, generative AI or predictive AI, whichever it is, it's not going to create magic out of data. I mean, then you see hallucinations, which is the problem, right? It'll go and complete it in whichever way it wants it to complete. So we don't want that. Clearly, that's a problem that generative AI faces, and so we don't want that. And we really need that full picture of data and in the moment, real-time, fresh, somebody stayed there last night, the information is fresh, it's not stale, it's complete. So that's what this BigQuery and zero data copy enables. And then the ML can really work on top of it. The AI models can really work, whether you're generating an email or whether you're calculating a particular score for them in the moment, then it can really operate on that. I think that's what really is the great power of this. I've seen it in other companies too, not just the hotels example. I think it was a healthcare company as well, where you have an example of, I think, marketing campaigns being run on Salesforce side, whereas you have claims and visits information, clinic visits information on Google side. Whereas now if you were to run those marketing campaigns using all that information, but there is engagement with that marketing, whether it's website visits, whether it is email opens and so on. And that data actually now, it's bidirectional, right? So data flows back also to Google, which it did not have before. And so you can do better analytics, better data science for models that they're using on Vertex side. So that bidirectionality is really quite powerful.
Yeah. Ali, anything to add on that?
And talking about the bidirectionality, one of the things that we have in a slightly adjacent space is Gemini for Google Workspace. Your partner inside of Google Workspace can access Salesforce data, and from the Salesforce side, you can access your workspace data. This is one of the rare collaborations that we have in the industry where our collaboration platforms are actually talking to each other. That gives us a very strong competitive advantage for our customers, our mutual customers.
That's right.
That's important.
That's great. Kaushal, can you talk a little bit about the strategy and opportunity around bring your own model or bring your own AI? What value does that unlock? What's behind that strategy for Salesforce?
Yeah, so for Salesforce, I think the key is a few things, right? We've always believed in the power of the platform with our metadata approach for a long time. And that has really brewed a great ecosystem with hundreds of thousands of partners who can really bring value to that. And we know that we ourselves cannot create everything ourselves, right? I mean, there is a lot of innovation happening elsewhere, but we've got a leading CRM that really is underpinned with AI and data and trust. That's our grand vision. Now, to help realize that, we know that there are LLMs, large language models, which are produced like Gemini, for instance, and so on. And we would like to take advantage of that. At the same time, customers have already invested in multiple places. So we have a very open and flexible strategy of our AI platform where we can hook up to any large language model of choice, and there are preferred partners like Vertex integrations and so on. And at the same time, we allow for customers saying, okay, but you don't really need to go through only Salesforce. You already have an investment, like the couple of customers that we already referenced. You have that investment already. You've tuned a model. So that's a lot of investment. You guys have built tools on Vertex side to train models, tune them. Somebody has invested a lot of time. And now if we come in and say, well, if you want to use that in Salesforce, you just have to move your entire ML investment to some other kind of, platform, then you're giving them a forced choice, saying you either move the data to one place or you move the model to the other place. So we are taking an approach which is highly flexible. You neither need to move the data, neither need to move the model investments. We say you can bring in your own model. And we recognize that that's hard also, right? It's not an easy thing, a lot of times just bringing in the model. So what we've also historically invested in is no code and low code tools, very business-friendly tools for doing a variety of tasks. And we've expanded that and extended that to really the models approach as well. So we have a model builder tool, which allows you to just specify endpoints, very small amount of parameters to really make that connection to Vertex in this case, and bring that model seamlessly with few clicks into Salesforce, and then you can use it in Salesforce applications. So now you've kind of amplified and multiplied the power of your investment in the Salesforce platform, and at the same time in the Google side of the house. So the bring your own model approach really unlocks the power of all of that. And we already talked about the data investments and the integrations there. So this flexibility, I've been in numerous customer conversations where they keep asking, saying, I've already invested in particular cloud, and Google in this case, GCP, and so on. So they are delighted the fact that we've launched this integration, and they're able to leverage it out of the box.
Great, and I'm glad you started to talk about how challenging this can be, right? I don't want to give the impression that this is all super easy. I don't think any of us want to give that impression. And so I feel like last year was really a rush to PR and publicity. Everyone wanted to get out there with what their vision statement was around AI. And now we're really pivoting towards putting the effort behind those visions and trying to bring those things to light. Maybe starting with you, Ali, what are some of the most common barriers that you're seeing customers and partners face challenging work trying to get this stuff to production?
Right. There's a lot of POCs. How many people have done an AI POC in the last year? Raise your hands. Wow.
That's
okay,
good.
Excellent. Kudos to you. How many have put it in production? Raise your hands. That is awesome. That's like a third of the, or maybe a fourth, a fourth of the population. That's excellent. So as we see the year go by, we're going to have more hands raised because we're partnering, because you're experiencing the power of generative AI. But as you move from POC to production, one of the things that we learn is the fact that we need to know as an organization, where are we in the journey to AI adoption and ROI, and then determine where we should be in order to actualize, let's say, these use cases that are up there, right? So I can't be doing just retrieval augmentation if I fundamentally need to be tuning models for specific domains. Domain-specific areas, domain-specific models are going to be paramount in the success of your organizations, right? And retrieval augmentation is an important part of making sure the model is fresh, gets new data, and is relevant to the question being asked. But if underlying all of that, the model doesn't really understand the domain, meaning it hasn't been tuned for that domain, there's still a gap. So in terms of maturity of the organization, if you're at the RAG level, everybody's doing retrieval augmentation, and more people are doing tuning. But if you have the perception that in these projects, in these lines of business, you actually need to start doing tuning, for example, and use retrieval augmentation plus fine-tuning together to have a more powerful, relevant, hyper-personalized experience for your customers, then that's going to be a leg up. And then if you go to the fourth level of maturity, I'm skipping level one. Level one is just prompt and serve. It's just prompt engineering. In the fourth level, you have grounding. So for example, today we announced various forms of grounding. What does that mean? It means that when you access Salesforce and BigQuery via our large language models, and then we give you something back, as Kaushal said earlier, if we don't have the data, the model may hallucinate. Now, with the grounding services, you can actually search and find things that are relevant to that answer. So you can be more sure that the answer is actually a factual answer, because Google Search provides you with sources of factuality that you can actually verify. So that's a level 4. Level 5 is a multi-agent system. Today we all saw about the agent discussions and how we have different types of customer agents, data agents, collaboration agents, etc. So multi-agent systems and ML ops becomes important. I'm going to stop there, but in terms of levels of maturity, but what I aim to say, back to your question, Seth, is that as an organization, let's say I'm a retail organization, I need to know where I am and where I need to be in terms of AI maturity, and leverage the tools. If you have Salesforce, if you have a GCP BigQuery capabilities, if you're running via Vertex AI, if you would like to tune your models, you now have the capability to get to that next level of maturity that can unlock your ROI with these use cases.
Great, thank you. Kaushal?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that's happening from last year to this year is a lot of, we saw in the room as well, a lot of exploration was happening, POCs, that's really great. I think it's getting to execution next, right? So people have learned and they're trying to put that into production. But also when you start to put into production, I'm sure all of you whoever is trying it and whoever wants to try it, immediately questions come up around metrics, you know, ability to trace, ability to debug, ability to explain things, what's going on. And it's not like it's going to be a slam dunk, right? I mean, sometimes it will generate some response, the large language model, which you might scratch your head on saying, wait, why did that come up, right? How do I debug it? So do you have all the supporting tools that you need in the organization, and are they all sufficiently well integrated? And that's not there yet. I think the industry is rapidly maturing. It's growing at an incredible pace. And so this year is the time when a lot of these tools are coming into play. And also people are settling perhaps on some metrics as, okay, these set of metrics perhaps do indicate that this is a reasonable quality. I don't think there's a full consensus on like, okay, these are the metrics exactly that will indicate that this is the best quality, right? There are certain metrics in like faithfulness or groundedness and so on that you could use, and people are beginning to do that. How do you think about all of these tools and metrics is something that we face a lot of times in customer conversations. And it was also, we invested a lot of time in our Einstein trust layer. You might have seen some things about it. And the reason we put trust at the center of a lot of things, I mean, trust is our #1 corporate value that's there, but also we think it's super important for generative AI is because people did not have the confidence initially, and they're still building that confidence, I think, saying, if I ask it to generate a reply to a incoming sales lead, an automatically generated email, can I have the confidence to put that in the hands of my support agents, my sales reps, and everybody? And would my brand somehow take a hit because we are sending something that's not great? And we've built a lot of tools to ensure that trust and safety and privacy and giving customers that confidence. So those have definitely helped. But as you introduce multimodality, I think it will introduce more complexity.
Sure.
We've seen some great videos and image generation capabilities, video generation capabilities this morning in the keynote. And I think multimodality and trust on top of that, how do I ensure that it did not generate an image that is somehow not safe to send? Or did it do something which I would never send from my brand perspective, didn't reflect my brand voice? I think that's something that's, again, I don't want to say exactly a hurdle, but it's something that we have to provide tools for customers to get confidence in.
Well, guardrails, right?
Guardrails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it brings up a good question. What are some of those strategies to provide confidence for employees in AI-generated content and insights? And really, I mean, the trust conversation gets into the responsible AI conversation very fast. So what are some of those strategies that you guys are seeing, and what are some of the recommendations, Ali, maybe?
The grounding APIs that I mentioned, getting to a level 4 where you have grounded information, meaning you generate the response and then you call the grounding API to see how well it's grounded, either in your enterprise data or externally verifiable sources. And you have MLOps capabilities that constantly refresh this pipeline. So you're monitoring, you're grounding, and you're potentially retraining if you see a shift in the outcome. So I think these are going to be exceedingly important things. By the way, some models provide you with the capability to implement trustworthy AI in a very pragmatic, hands-on fashion. So with Vertex AI, when you send a request to the model, you get back about 16 parameters. It's metadata that you get back. It'll tell you the degree of toxicity, bias, politicalness, whether it's about financial information or healthcare, et cetera. So you can threshold on these things and decide whether the guardrails make sense in your organization, in your application context, whether you should use that response or go for another response and retrieve the data and then try again. So those guardrails, I think, are there for us to put in place, and we'll see much more adoption in organizations.
Right. Yeah, I think just to add maybe a couple of points, I think those are all absolutely right, what Ali said. So we work with our Office of Ethics and Humane Use within Salesforce, which has been at the forefront of protecting customers' kind of information, privacy, trust, security. All of them have been front and center for them for a long time. And generative AI has taken it up kind of a notch, essentially. So when we build and implement our trust layer, we work actively with that team to do red teaming on responses, prompts and responses. So, or when we are building, our Salesforce Research builds models for toxicity detection, which is an extra layer of protection that we add on top of all outgoing and incoming kind of responses, on top of what already model providers are doing. And we provide customer configurability on that. So what we're saying is sometimes, even PII masking, for instance, when we are sending data out as a prompt, we strip out PII information and we have masking models in place for that, for instance. The other ways, I know one of the questions that early on customers had was, hey, what if my data is being used to train a general model, right? And wouldn't my data IP being used for others in my industry? And there were a lot of zero data retention agreements that we have made with all large language model vendors to essentially say they will not, and they've come out and said themselves that you all have said that you will not retain that data for and use it for training your foundational model, so to speak, right? So a lot of these, I think, whether it's policies, whether it is procedures internally, and providing metrics, whether it's the level of toxicity, level of bias, and things like that, and customer configurability of these things. I think those have collectively given, I would say, a fair bit of sort of confidence to customers to start saying, yes, we will put these in production. We seem to have enough guardrails that there are for us to go into production. And there are ways for us to tweak it if we need to, because control is the other part of it, or control or customizability is the other part of it.
And I'll add to that, I think Kaushal built a really good foundation there. You can always add human-in-the-loop capabilities.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that RLHF, the reinforcement learning with human feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, when you get a response,
right,
absolutely essential. I'm sure our organizations and all of you are not going to fully rely on an AI response. We need humans to check these responses to gain confidence in the outputs. And so the ability to fundamentally integrate RLHF in your pipeline is essential to give that thumbs up from a human perspective. So the model learns. And this is where we published a paper back in 2021 around conversational agents and aligning them with human judgment. That's where we introduced the notion of RLHF, and the industry has picked it up very appropriately. So we encourage you to think about the RLHF capabilities so that you can have human in the loop, verify these models in the final analysis, which is, I think, where the direction you're going.
Yep. And you both hit on this. The pace is so frantic at this moment that it's, one of my mentors is always saying to me, have strong beliefs, but hold them lightly. You have to be willing to be flexible. You have to be willing to adjust on the fly. And quite frankly, when we sit here today in April, what it looks like in April of next year, right, no one really knows. But those guardrails and the responsibility of putting them in place, I think, is really important to giving customers and people the flexibility to kind of adjust and evolve. Kaushal, you mentioned a little bit about KPIs before. I think we were talking off to the side before we came up on stage a little while ago. Measuring the ROI, quantifying the effectiveness of these solutions, of these use cases, of these capabilities. is really still kind of in flux. So talk to me a little bit about how Salesforce is thinking about understanding the ROI of these capabilities and measuring and quantifying the effectiveness of it.
It's a great question. I think that's probably one of the things that people have to cross when that's available. I think that's a hurdle that will really drive a lot of adoption once you cross it. Things like, I think it becomes specific to use cases as well. So if you think of certain use cases, let's say a support agent, a customer service agent was doing case wrap-up summaries, as an example. And they have to do it after every case conversation happens, and they have to write a summary and input it. Normally it takes them maybe 45 minutes or whatever time it takes. Then you have a generative AI tool which just summarizes it, and you can feed in all that information and it says quickly generate a summary, but there is a human in the loop. They can edit it or oversee that quality of what it generated and quickly put that into the database now, or then that reduces the time significantly. We've seen it could reduce it to 10 minutes or 7, 8, 9 minutes. So now you can start to measure in certain cases the business outcome based ROI, right, as a metric, and saying because of this particular feature and enhancement, it has done this. And also there have been studies where we're seeing customer and the productivity that gains it would give them, right? So it might drive it 15% more number of cases per hour or 30%, whatever the case may be, right? So you could look at throughput, you could look at productivity sort of improvements over there. And I think the quality of the writing improvements as well. For instance, not every person who was doing that job perhaps was writing equally good kind of wrap-up summaries. Some might have been better, some might have been new at the job, and maybe they weren't doing as good a job as before. So you could measure the quality of the writing. Maybe it's the conciseness, maybe it's the coherence, maybe it's the grammatical correctness. You can measure, there are a lot of natural language processing in the NLP world, there are a lot of such measures you can apply to how good a certain piece of text is from generally how it is written. So the quality improvements can, especially I believe I've seen studies where for people who are joining in new into that job or less experienced, their quality improvements or the productivity improvements for them are a factor more, 2 to 3 times more than somebody who's experienced in that job and who's already probably good in that job. For them, it's probably the incremental, it's smaller, right? But if you take an average case, then you can come up with certain business outcome related metrics for particular cases and saying, oh, it did do X more per hour or this much more productivity gains, and I saw the improvements in quality which you could measure perhaps in how well the job is being done and how fast it's being done. So I think it comes down to some kinds of metrics in those areas. Some other areas I would say it's a little fuzzy still, so not saying that it's all solved, right? And if it generates an email, did it help the salesperson close the job faster, the lead conversion faster, and did they have a better quality conversation with the customer as a result of it? Those are slightly difficult to probably quantify. Again, I think we'll have to look closely, and as these get into production, I think customers will really experiment with various sort of measurement metrics and see what resonates. So I think there's some amount of experimentation also that's ahead of us in that space.
Great. Ali, anything to add on that?
Couldn't agree more. A couple of other things to double click on for experts, right? So Kaushal, you mentioned people who are novices.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on the expert side. Sure. So the experts will be able to do more with less. So in a given, let's say, a 2-hour period of time, they were able to do 2 things. Now they can do 3 things, 4 things. What they can do is they can generate content or code or whatever their task may be. And because they're experts in that area, they can verify, they can do an eye check, an eyeballing of the output, and determine if they need to update anything and send it out. Mm-hmm. But the general structure is something that is quickly generated. So I know we're more, so people on my team come, I mean, we're living and breathing this every day, but people on my team come to me and say, you know what, I implemented something that would take 2 days. I implemented it in 2 hours.
Right.
They just can't believe it themselves, and they're in this knee deep. So this is a very comforting and at the same time very hopeful kind of world where they can devote more time to other things and be more productive at the same time. So I'll focus on that aspect.
Absolutely.
Great. So we have a few minutes left. I think we'll probably run out of time for Q&A, so we'll definitely, if you'd like to talk to us in the hall afterwards, we can probably stick around a little bit for that. Every time I talk to you two, which is every single week, I feel like I learned something new, so thank you so much as well. I'm going to combine the last two questions and really, how do people get started today? How do people get started with this partnership and this journey today? And then the second question is really, where do you think this journey is going? Like, what are the trends that you see emerging over the next 6 to 12 months? And Ali, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, so trends, I just remembered the last thing he said because I'm an LLM, and I just remember I'm kidding. So multi-agent systems, I think, are going to be very, very important to really understand and implement. I think the testing that Kaushal mentioned, the comparative testing is going to be super important to do side-by-side tests really quickly. And then to make sure that we have human in the loop that can influence the outcome much more rapidly in systems that are in production. So as we go into production, we need to have these evaluation frameworks at the heart and center of your systems. Evaluation is not something you do at the end, it's something that you iteratively do at each step of the way. You're doing prompting, you evaluate. You do RAG, you evaluate. You do tuning, you evaluate. You serve the model, you evaluate. You make a call, route the call to a smaller agent, you evaluate the results. So that you can have these feedback loops. It's not that we don't trust the models. Yes, initially it's that. But after a time, you will start trusting the models because it's something that you've crafted. And you're more confident with them. It's never going to be 100%, but you get more trust. But at the end of the day, things have to improve. They can't remain in a steady state. So the ability for us to understand causality and cause and effect is going to be something that's going to be injected into the fabric of what we call generative AI these days. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Kaushal, trends, how do people get started? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think predicting something is fraught with risk. As you know, somebody once said, I think the worldwide market for computers was 5. It's a true story. It's probably computers were occupying the whole room like this at this point. At that point, it was World War II probably afterwards. So in any case, I think some trends, I mean, these are all valid though, because they are more next steps in what comes after this. We can clearly kind of see some of that. Kind of the fog is clearing in some of those areas, right? Because metrics, tools for testing, evaluation, all of those are very valid, what Ali said. I completely concur with that. I think in general also the mindset behavioral change is also something interesting for organizations. The culture of sort of being able to use a lot of data together and data-driven decision making, also leaving some decisions to, can you leave it to an agent or a system is something, because if you're starting to use it for sales, then you're really putting business things or support agent, then it's automatically responding sometimes maybe. Can you do that? Can you let go of that? And do it, and that's a shift in mindset also that needs to kind of come, right? And of course, model capabilities are advancing. It's really hard to say. I mean, every day there is so much more power that's being infused into models. But suffice it to say that they're becoming multimodal, meaning image, video, all learning through that, and the pace of learning and inference and training. Chip advancements are significant, ones are coming up, so more powerful models for sure, I would think. Smaller models also perhaps at the same time, more powerful, larger ones perhaps, but at the same time smaller, more domain-specific, task-specific ones perhaps, and maybe more customizability. Maybe some customers will want to tune those models and experiment there. So multi-model universe and multimodal as well. I think some of those plus tools and those things, those areas seem like fairly reasonable trends, I think, to get these into production and for businesses to start realizing their competitive advantage and grow and increase their productivity.
That's great. Kaushal, thank you. Ali, thank you. And everyone else, thank you so much for your attention over the last 45 minutes. Hope this was valuable for you, and thank you, and have a great rest of Google Next.